The crystal towers of Veltara Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside those beautiful buildings, millions of Veltar lived their perfect lives, connected to each other through their minds. They shared thoughts, feelings, and dreams without ever speaking a word. Their society was peaceful, organized, and flawless, but Zarathiel was not perfect. She sat alone in the ruins outside the great city, her pale blue skin glowing weakly in the dying light of the twin suns. Where other Veltar had smooth, unmarked faces, hers was covered in tiny scars from years of seizures. Her large, silver eyes, which should have sparkled with the inner light of the collective consciousness, were dull and empty. The pain started again, building behind her eyes like a storm. Zara pressed her hands against her temples and tried to breathe slowly. The voices of her people whispered at the edge of her mind, but they were wrong, twisted, painful. What came naturally to every other Veltar felt like hot needles in her brain. She had been born this way. The healers called it neural disconnection syndrome. Her brain could not properly connect to the vast network that linked all Veltar minds. Instead of hearing clear thoughts and feeling warm emotions from others, she got only static, confusion, and agony. Broken, they called her. Defective, worthless, the seizure hit without warning. Zara's body went rigid as electricity seemed to race through her nerves. Her vision went white, and she fell backward onto the rough ground. For several minutes she shook uncontrollably while her damaged mind tried to process signals it was never meant to handle. When it was over, she lay still, breathing hard and tasting blood from where she had bitten her tongue. Above her, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. This happened several times a week, sometimes more. The healers had tried everything they knew, but nothing helped. Finally, they had given up. Her own family had abandoned her when she was young, unable to bear the shame of having a child who could not join the collective. Zara lived now in the forgotten places of Veltara Prime, in buildings that had been damaged in the last great earthquake and never repaired. She survived by finding pieces of broken technology and selling them to merchants who did not ask questions. It was a hard life, but it was hers. The sound of strange engines broke the quiet evening air. Zara sat up slowly, her head still throbbing from the seizure. In the distance, she could see lights moving across the sky. Not Veltar ships, which flew silently using thought-controlled energy fields. These ships made noise, left trails of fire behind them, and moved in ways that seemed almost violent compared to the gentle flight of her people's vessels. Aliens. Zara had heard whispers that first contact was coming. The collective had been buzzing with excitement and nervousness for weeks. But since she could not properly access the network, she knew almost nothing about these newcomers. She only caught fragments, painful pieces of thoughts that made little sense. The alien ships landed in the great plaza near the center of the city. Even from her distant hiding place in the ruins, Zara could see the crowds of Veltar gathering to greet them. Their combined thoughts would be like a warm ocean of curiosity and welcome. She envied them that connection, even as she knew it would have been torture for her to experience. Over the next few days, Zara watched from the shadows as the aliens met with her people's leaders. The visitors were strange creatures, shorter than Veltar, with solid, blocky bodies and skin that came in different colors. They wore thick clothing that covered most of their bodies and carried tools and devices that looked crude, but functional. What fascinated Zara most was how they seemed to communicate. They made sounds with their mouths, moving their lips and tongues to create different noises, and they seemed to understand each other perfectly, even though Zara could sense no mental connection between them at all. How was this possible? How could thinking beings function without sharing thoughts? It was like watching people navigate in complete darkness. But they did function. In fact, they seemed remarkably capable. She watched them work with their hands, building things, fixing their equipment, taking measurements of everything around them. They appeared to think as individuals rather than as part of a group mind, yet they cooperated effectively. It made Zara wonder if perhaps there was more than one way to be intelligent, more than one way to live. Her people treated the aliens with polite curiosity, but she sensed an undercurrent of superiority in the collective's attitude. The Veltar were obviously more advanced, more evolved. These crude beings with their noisy machines and primitive verbal communication were interesting oddities. Nothing more, but Zara found herself drawn to watch them whenever she could safely get close to the city. There was something about the way they moved and worked that appealed to her. They seemed to rely on themselves rather than on the group, to solve problems through trial and error rather than through shared wisdom. It reminded her of her own life in the ruins, where she had learned to fix things by experimenting, to find food by exploring, to survive by adapting. She had always thought this made her strange and broken. But seeing these aliens, she began to wonder if maybe it was just a different way of being. One evening, as she was making her way back to her shelter after a day of scavenging, another seizure struck. This one was worse than usual, probably brought on by the stress and excitement of watching the alien visitors. Zara fell to her knees in the rubble, her mind filled with white-hot pain. When she came back to awareness, she found herself lying in a different position than when she had fallen. Someone had moved her, placed something soft under her head, covered her with a blanket that smelled strange but comforting. She opened her eyes to see one of the aliens sitting nearby. It was smaller than the others she had observed, with long dark hair and gentle brown eyes. The creature was watching her with an expression of concern that Zara had rarely seen directed at her by anyone, let alone a member of another species. The alien made soft sounds, probably trying to communicate. When Zara did not respond, it reached into a pack and pulled out a device. After pressing several buttons, the device spoke in perfect Veltar. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" Zara stared at the alien in amazement. Not only had the stranger helped her during her seizure, but it was actively trying to talk to her. No Veltar had shown her such kindness in years. I am broken," Zara managed to say, her voice rough from disuse. She rarely had reason to speak aloud. The alien's expression grew even more concerned. It said something in its own language, then used the device again. "You are not broken. You are sick. Sickness can be treated." For the first time in her life, Zara felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. The alien who had helped Zara introduced herself as Elena. She was a doctor, she explained through her translation device, someone who helped sick people get better. Elena had been studying the local plants near the landing site when she found Zara having her seizure. "Your people told us to leave you alone," Elena said the next day when she returned to check on Zara. "They said you were damaged and could not be fixed, but I do not believe that." Zara sat in her makeshift shelter, still weak from the previous day's episode. She studied Elena's face, trying to understand why this stranger cared about her condition. "Why do you want to help me? I am nothing to you." Elena was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "Where I come from, we believe every person has value. No one should suffer alone when help is possible." This was a completely foreign concept to Zara. In Veltar society, individuals existed to serve the collective. Those who could not contribute were simply ignored or abandoned. The idea that someone might help another person simply because they were suffering was revolutionary. Elena brought another human with her the next day. This one was taller, with short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to see everything. He introduced himself as Marcus, an engineer who designed and built things. "Elena told me about your condition," Marcus said through his translator. "I would like to understand how it works if you do not mind explaining." No one had ever asked Zara to explain her disability before. The healers had poked and prodded her, run tests, and discussed her condition as if she were not there. But Marcus seemed genuinely interested in her experience. Zara described the pain, the confusion, the way normal Veltar thoughts felt like broken glass in her mind. She told them about the seizures, the isolation, the way her own people had given up on her. Marcus listened carefully, asking questions that showed he was really thinking about her answers. "So the problem is not that your brain does not work," he said finally. "The problem is that it works differently from what your technology expects." "I suppose that is one way to look at it," Zara said, though she had never thought of it that way. "In my experience," Marcus said, "when technology does not work with a person, you change the technology, not the person." Elena nodded in agreement. "We will need to study your condition more to understand how to help you. Would you allow us to run some tests?" Zara hesitated. The Veltar healers had run many tests, all of them painful and useless, but there was something different about the way these humans approached her problem. They seemed to see her as a person worth helping rather than a puzzle to solve. "What kind of tests?" she asked. Elena and Marcus exchanged a look. "Gentle ones," Elena promised. "We will monitor your brain activity during normal times and during seizures. We will not hurt you, and we will stop any time you ask us to." Over the following weeks, the two humans visited Zara daily. They brought portable equipment from their ship and set up a small medical station in her shelter. Elena studied Zara's biology, while Marcus analyzed the way Veltar technology interacted with her unique neural patterns. What they discovered surprised everyone, including Zara herself. Her brain was not damaged or defective. Instead, it was wired completely differently from other Veltar. Where most of her people had neural pathways designed for collective thought sharing, hers were optimized for independent processing and creative problem-solving. "You are not broken," Elena explained one afternoon. "You are like a person with different colored eyes or different shaped hands. Your brain works, just not the same way as others." "But I cannot connect to the collective," Zara pointed out. "I cannot function in my society." "That is because your society is built only for one type of mind," Marcus said. "But there are many types of intelligence. Yours might be rare among your people, but it is not wrong." The humans began working on solutions. Elena developed a medicine that reduced Zara's seizures without dulling her mind. It was made from earth plants, processed in ways that Veltar science had never considered. Marcus built devices that could translate the telepathic signals of other Veltar into visual and audio formats that Zara's brain could process comfortably. Suddenly, for the first time in her life, she could understand what other people were thinking without pain. But more importantly, the humans treated her as an equal. They asked for her opinions, listened to her ideas, and valued her unique perspective. Elena shared stories of her work as a doctor, while Marcus explained the engineering projects he had worked on. They seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and experiences. Zara found herself looking forward to their daily visits with an eagerness she had never felt before. Elena's kindness and Marcus's brilliant mind fascinated her in ways she struggled to understand. She had never experienced feelings like these, had never had anyone care about her well-being, or respect her intelligence. The other humans on the expedition began to notice Elena and Marcus spending time with Zara. Some expressed concern about interfering with local customs. But the two scientists insisted that helping someone who was suffering was more important than following diplomatic protocols. This created tension with the Veltar leadership. The collective had been willing to tolerate the humans' presence as long as they remained visitors who observed but did not interfere. But Elena and Marcus's work with Zara was seen as inappropriate meddling in Veltar society. "You do not understand our ways," the High Speaker told them during one of the official meetings. "The damaged one cannot be helped. She is what she is. Your efforts only cause confusion and false hope." "We understand perfectly," Elena replied, her voice calm but firm. "You have given up on someone who could be helped because it is easier than admitting your methods are incomplete." The tension continued to build as Zara's condition improved. With Elena's medicine and Marcus's devices, she was having fewer seizures and could interact more normally with the world around her. For the first time, she began to imagine a life where she was not constantly in pain and isolation, but she also began to realize that this life might not be possible on Veltara Prime. Her people would never accept her recovery, because it challenged their belief that collective consciousness was the only proper way to exist, and that scared her more than she was willing to admit. The breakthrough came 3 weeks after. Elena and Marcus had started working with Zara. Marcus had been experimenting with different ways to help her interact with Veltar technology when he made a discovery that changed everything. "Your brain pattern is not just different," he told her excitedly. "It is actually more complex in some ways than typical Veltar neural structures. You process information in patterns that most of your people cannot access." Zara stared at the display screen Marcus had set up, showing colorful waves that represented her brain activity. "What does that mean?" "It means you might be able to see things that others cannot," Elena explained. She had been studying the readouts with fascination. "Your unique neural pathways could give you insights that collective thinking misses." To test this theory, they began showing Zara problems that had puzzled the Veltar leadership during the first contact negotiations. The humans and Veltar had been having difficulty understanding each other's motivations and decision-making processes. Despite the translation technology, when Zara looked at the transcripts of these conversations, she immediately saw patterns that had been invisible to both sides. "The High Council is not telling you the complete truth," she said after reading through several days of diplomatic exchanges. They are afraid of something, but they do not want to admit it. Afraid of what? Elena asked. Zara pointed to specific phrases in the transcripts. See how they keep asking about your population size, your military capabilities, your expansion plans? They are worried that humans might be a threat to Veltar dominance in this sector of space. Marcus frowned. But we have been very clear that we come in peace seeking friendship and trade. Yes, but look at this. Zara highlighted another section. They also keep asking about human individuality, about how you make decisions without collective consciousness. This terrifies them. Why would that be frightening? Elena wondered. Zara was quiet for a moment, organizing her thoughts. The collective consciousness is not as perfect as my people claim. It creates unity, but it also creates weakness. When everyone thinks the same way, no one questions whether that way is correct. Individual thinking threatens the whole system. This insight proved to be exactly right. Over the following days, as the humans adjusted their negotiation strategy based on Zara's analysis, the talks became much more productive. The Veltar leadership began to relax as they realized the humans were not trying to undermine their society, but Zara's growing importance to the human mission created new problems. The High Council demanded to know why the aliens were working with a defective citizen. They ordered Zara to stop helping the humans and return to her place in the ruins. I will not abandon her, Elena said firmly when the council confronted her about it. Zara has been invaluable to our understanding of your people. She deserves recognition, not punishment. She is broken, the High Speaker insisted. Damaged goods. Her opinions are worthless because she cannot join the collective wisdom. Her opinions have solved problems your collective wisdom could not, Marcus pointed out. Maybe the problem is not with Zara, but with a system that wastes such talent. The confrontation left everyone angry and frustrated. The Veltar were offended that aliens were criticizing their ancient social structure. The humans were disgusted by the casual cruelty shown toward Zara. But for Zara herself, the conflict was deeply confusing. For the first time in her life, she was not just surviving but thriving. Elena's treatments had reduced her seizures to rare, mild episodes. Marcus's devices allowed her to understand others without pain. Most importantly, both humans treated her as a valued friend and colleague. She had begun to feel emotions she had never experienced before. When Elena smiled at her, Zara felt warmth spread through her chest. When Marcus explained a complex engineering problem, she found herself fascinated not just by his knowledge but by the enthusiasm in his voice. These feelings frightened her. She had no experience with attraction or affection, having been isolated from normal social development. But she could not deny that both humans had become incredibly important to her in ways that went beyond friendship. Elena seemed to sense some of what Zara was feeling. One evening, as they worked together on analyzing Veltar brain scan data, she spoke carefully about human emotions and relationships. Among my people, Elena said, we believe love can take many forms. Sometimes one person loves another. Sometimes one person loves two others or three others. What matters is that the feelings are honest and that everyone involved is happy. Zara felt her face grow warm. I do not understand these emotions, she admitted. I have never had the chance to learn about them. You are learning now, Elena said gently. And you are learning well. Marcus, who had been working quietly on his equipment, looked up at them. Zara, he said, his voice unusually serious, Elena and I have been talking. About you, about us, about what is happening here. Zara's heart started beating faster. What about it? We both care about you very much, Elena said. More than just as friends or colleagues. We have feelings for you that go deeper than professional respect. And we think, Marcus added, that you might have similar feelings for us. Zara stared at them, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. But I am Veltar. You are human, and I am broken. You are not broken, Elena said firmly. You are wonderful exactly as you are, and love does not recognize species boundaries. The question is, Marcus said gently, what do you want? Zara looked at these two remarkable beings who had changed her life completely. Elena, whose compassion had saved her from despair and whose medical knowledge had freed her from pain. Marcus, whose brilliant mind had solved problems no one else could solve and whose respect had given her confidence she never knew she could have. I want to be with both of you, she said quietly. I want to stay with you and learn about these feelings and help with your work. But I do not know if that is possible. Elena reached out and took one of Zara's hands. We will find a way to make it possible. Marcus took her other hand. We promise. But even as they spoke these words, all three of them knew that powerful forces were aligning against them. The Veltar leadership was growing increasingly hostile to human presence on their world. Soon they would have to make choices that would change all their lives forever. The ultimatum came without warning. Zara was working with Elena and Marcus in their temporary research station. When the air filled with the harmonic tones that meant an official collective announcement was being broadcast, all three of them stopped what they were doing as the translation device converted the telepathic message into audible speech. The alien visitors have 48 hours to depart Veltara Prime. They will take nothing and no one with them. Any Veltar who attempts to leave with the aliens will be considered a traitor to the collective. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. She had known this moment might come, but the reality of it hit her like a physical blow. Elena immediately began packing their essential equipment. We need to get you to our ship, she said to Zara. If we move quickly, we can— No, Zara interrupted. They will be watching. If you try to take me by force, they will attack your ship. People will die. Marcus was already running calculations on his portable computer. She is right. The Veltar defense systems are incredibly advanced. Our ship cannot fight them and protect everyone aboard. The next day brought more bad news. Captain Williams, the leader of the human expedition, met privately with Elena, Marcus, and Zara to explain the political situation. The Galactic Council has sided with the Veltar, he said grimly. They are invoking the non-interference principle. We are ordered to leave immediately and have no further contact with this world. That is ridiculous, Elena said angrily. We are not interfering. We are helping someone who asked for help. I agree with you, the captain replied, but we are outnumbered and outgunned. If we do not comply, the council will send enforcement ships. The Veltar have made it clear they consider our relationship with Zara to be a violation of their sovereignty. Zara listened to this conversation with growing despair. She had finally found people who valued her, who loved her, who made her feel whole. Now they were being forced apart by politics and fear. But worse news was yet to come. That evening, as Zara sat alone in her shelter trying to decide what to do, she heard movement in the ruins around her. Several figures emerged from the shadows, moving carefully toward her hiding place. They were other Veltar, but not members of the ruling collective. These were the outcasts, the damaged ones, the failures that society preferred to forget. Zara recognized some of them from her years of scavenging in the ruins. We heard about what the humans did for you, said Kethaval, an older Veltar whose neural implants had been damaged in an accident years ago. We heard that they made you better. We want that too, added Shiranis, a young female whose autism-like condition made collective consciousness impossible for her. We want to be free from pain. More figures stepped into the light, dozens of them, all bearing the marks of neural abnormalities that made them outcasts from Veltar society. They had been living in hiding, forgotten and abandoned until word spread about Zara's transformation. The humans cannot take all of us, Zara said sadly, and even if they could, the Veltar would never allow it. Then what do we do? Kethaval asked desperately. Do we just accept that we will always be broken and worthless? Zara looked at these desperate people, her fellow outcasts, and felt something new stirring in her chest. It was not love or attraction or even hope. It was anger. Pure, clean anger at the injustice of their situation. No, she said firmly. We do not accept it. The next morning, Zara made her decision. She went to Elena and Marcus one last time, knowing it might be their final meeting. I cannot come with you, she told them, her heart breaking with each word. If I leave, nothing changes for the others like me. They will continue to suffer and die in the ruins while the collective pretends they do not exist. Elena's eyes filled with tears. There must be another way. We cannot just abandon you. You are not abandoning me, Zara said softly. You have given me something more precious than escape. You have given me the knowledge that I am not broken, and the confidence to help others understand that truth. Marcus gripped her hands tightly. This is not fair. You should not have to choose between love and duty. All important choices are unfair, Zara replied, but this is the right choice. That evening, as the humans prepared to depart, Zara put her plan into action. Using the communication devices Marcus had built for her, she reached out to every disabled Veltar she could find. Not just in the ruins, but in the hidden corners of the great city. in the outer settlements, anywhere the collective's failures had been forgotten. Her message was simple but revolutionary. You are not broken. You are different, and that difference has value. The humans proved this to me, and now I will prove it to you. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of Veltar who had been told they were worthless began to emerge from hiding. They gathered in the ruins where Zara lived, looking to her for leadership and hope. The Veltar authorities were horrified. Their carefully ordered society was being disrupted by the very people they had tried to erase. Emergency sessions of the High Council were called. Security forces were mobilized. But when they came to arrest Zara and disperse the gathering, something unexpected happened. The assembled outcasts, inspired by her example and guided by the techniques Elena and Marcus had taught her, joined together in a way that should have been impossible. Instead of trying to force their broken minds into the collective consciousness network, they created their own network. A chaotic, diverse, creative web of thought that was completely different from the rigid unity of normal Veltar society. And when the authorities tried to use their collective power to overwhelm this new network, they found themselves unable to do so. The outcasts' diversity made them resistant to the conformity-based attacks that worked on normal Veltar. For the first time in Veltar history, the collective had encountered minds it could not control or suppress. Zara stood at the center of this revolution, no longer the broken girl hiding in the ruins, but a leader fighting for the right of all minds to exist and flourish. She thought of Elena and Marcus, probably already in space by now, and hoped they would understand what she was doing. The real battle for Veltara Prime was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the humans left Veltara Prime. Zara stood on the highest platform of what had once been a ruined building, looking out over a transformed landscape. Where there had been forgotten ruins, there was now a thriving community. The outcasts had not simply survived their confrontation with the Veltar authorities. They had grown stronger. Their unique network of diverse minds had proven to be more creative, more adaptable, and more resilient than anyone had expected. When the collective tried to force them back into hiding, the outcasts had resisted. When the authorities tried to cut off their access to technology, they had built their own using principles learned from human engineering. When food and medical supplies were denied to them, they had developed new solutions based on the techniques Elena had taught Zara. But the greatest change was not in their circumstances. It was in Zara herself. She had become the leader she never knew she could be. Her experiences with Elena and Marcus had taught her that different did not mean inferior, and she had passed that lesson on to hundreds of others. The network of outcast minds had grown to include Veltar from across the planet, all of them learning to value their unique perspectives instead of seeing them as failures. The sound of approaching ships interrupted her thoughts. Zara looked up to see familiar vessels descending from the sky, and her hearts began racing with hope and joy. The human expedition had returned. Elena was the first to reach the platform, running toward Zara with tears streaming down her face. They embraced tightly, neither wanting to let go after so long apart. "We came back as soon as we could," Elena said. The Galactic Council finally agreed that the situation here had changed enough to warrant a new diplomatic mission. Marcus appeared beside them, pulling both women into a three-way hug. "We never stopped working to find a way back to you," he told Zara, "and we never stopped loving you." "I never stopped loving both of you either," Zara replied, her voice thick with emotion. "But I had work to do here." Elena looked around at the bustling community that had grown up around them. Former outcasts were working together on projects that would have been impossible for the old collective. Artists whose neural differences gave them unique creative vision. Engineers whose unconventional thinking led to revolutionary designs. Healers who could treat conditions that had baffled traditional Veltar medicine. "What you have built here is incredible," Elena said with admiration. "We built it using everything you taught me," Zara explained. "Human principles of individual worth, human engineering techniques, human medical knowledge. You gave me the tools and we used them to change our world." The transformation had not been easy or peaceful. There had been months of conflict with the traditional Veltar society. Some of the younger collective members had begun to question why diversity of thought was being suppressed. Some of the older leaders had tried to use violence to restore the old order. But gradually, as the outcast community proved its value through innovation and creativity, Attitudes had begun to change. The rigid collective consciousness was still the dominant force on Veltara Prime, but it was no longer the only acceptable way to exist. The High Council has agreed to recognize our community as autonomous, Zara explained to the humans as they toured the settlement. We are still Veltar citizens, but we govern ourselves according to our own principles. And those principles include the right to leave if we choose, added Kethval, who had become Zara's deputy in leading the community. Some of our people would like to explore the galaxy, to learn from other species the way Zara learned from humans. Captain Williams, who had come with the returning expedition, nodded approvingly. The Council has authorized us to accept Veltar immigrants who wish to join human space. We have established several new colonies that would benefit from your unique perspectives. But Zara was not thinking about politics or diplomacy. She was thinking about the two people who had saved her life and taught her to value herself. Elena and Marcus had kept their promise to find a way back to her. Now she wanted to keep her promise to them. I need to ask you something, she said to Elena and Marcus as they stood together watching the sunset paint the crystal towers in shades of gold and purple. When you left, you said you would find a way for us to be together. I said I would find a way too. Elena took her hand. What are you asking? I want to come with you, Zara said. The community here is strong now. They do not need me to lead them anymore. But I need both of you. I want to see the galaxy through human eyes, to continue learning and growing with the people I love. Marcus smiled and kissed her forehead gently. We were hoping you would say that. There is so much we want to show you, so many worlds where your talents would be valued. And, Elena added with a grin, there are other species out there who might benefit from the human approach to helping those who are different. You could become a healer yourself using everything you have learned. The idea filled Zara with excitement. She had never imagined that her painful experiences could become the foundation for helping others. But Elena and Marcus had shown her that wisdom often came from suffering overcome. 3 days later, Zara stood on the boarding ramp of the human ship, looking back at the world that had rejected her, and then been transformed by her refusal to accept that rejection. Dozens of other Veltar were boarding with her, all of them eager to explore what lay beyond their homeworld. Shiranis, the young female who had been one of the first to seek Zara's help, was among them. Are you nervous? She asked. Yes, Zara admitted, but I'm also excited. For the first time in my life, I am not just surviving or even just living. I am choosing my future. Elena appeared beside them wearing the blue uniform of the Human Medical Corps. Ready for your first lesson in xenobiology? She asked Zara. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Marcus looked up from a portable computer where he was designing new adaptive technologies. And I have ideas for at least a dozen new projects we could work on together. With your unique neural patterns and our engineering resources, there is no limit to what we could create. As the ship lifted off from Veltara Prime, Zara felt something she had never experienced before in her life. Complete happiness. She was leaving behind the world that had called her broken and heading toward a future where being different was seen as a gift. She was traveling with the two people who had taught her to love herself and whom she loved more than she had ever thought possible. And she was carrying the knowledge that sometimes the most important revolutions began with one person refusing to accept that they were worthless. The galaxy was vast, full of species and individuals who might need the kind of help that only humans seemed willing to give. Zara was ready to be part of that mission, to prove again and again that there was no such thing as broken, only different ways of being whole. Behind them, Veltara Prime continued to change, one mind at a time, as the lesson spread that diversity was strength, and that love could bridge any gap between hearts and species.